Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, January the 17th. And as we like to do from time to time, we're checking in with our good friend Barry Casselman, the Prairie Editor. And this is an amazing period of time, what we call from the election to the new presidency of Donald Trump here in a few days. And we want to get Barry's perspective of this very interesting transition, as well as his thoughts on what's coming ahead and some of the highlights of the transition, the cabinet nominations, as well as the end of the Biden presidency, and of course the beginning of what we believe will be a very exciting, or at least a very different Trump presidency. So let me say hello to our good friend Barry. How are you, Barry?
I'm good.
How is the weather up in the Midwest? It's going to get cold down here.
Well, it's going to get cold here, and unfortunately cold in D.C., but I think the Trump folks have wisely decided to move the ceremonies inside, and there will be no William Henry Harrison this time.
That's right. That's right. That was the case of the president who actually became ill because of the speech. I think it was raining that day, if I remember from my history, the cold rain, and the poor man got very sick, and I think he died a month or a month and a half later. Speaking of inaugurations, Barry, I wanted to just pick your brain a little bit. The first one that I remember was Richard Nixon in '69, and that's because we had come to the United States. We came in '64. The '65 inauguration, I don't remember that much. I think they showed it in school, but I don't remember it that much. But the '69 inauguration, I was more engaged, not just in the news, but also in the fact that our family had supported Nixon. What are some of the early inaugurations that you remember?
Well, I don't remember exactly which one was my first. The one that I attended a couple.
Oh, okay.
I really attended was the Bush, I believe, second inauguration. And in that one, I actually had tickets for the ball and for all the interesting dinners. And I sat during the inaugural parade in the family area of the new president.
So that would have been 2005, right?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, that would have been 2005. Okay.
And,
yeah. And which other one do you remember?
Well, I think I don't know. I know I think I probably went to the one in 1988.
Okay, Bush. Okay, that was Bush again. The first Bush, yeah.
But I'd have to go look at my records. All that is a while back.
Yeah.
I went to so many things. I went to all the national conventions, and I went to a lot of I did a lot of traveling in those days.
Yeah. Well, there's two that just come to my mind, memories. 85, of course, because they had the same problem. They had to go inside because of the cold weather. Almost identical situation to now. And the other one that I remember was 1981, when when Ronald Reagan became president. And I was actually with a bunch of business associates driving in the north of Mexico. And we were listening to a radio station out of San Antonio when when the swearing in happened. And I remember several people in the car. These were business people. We were all so thrilled that Ronald Reagan had just been sworn in. So that's one that I remember, just from the past. But it's such a long time ago. I mean, it was 40 years that Ronald Reagan was inaugurated inside. Time is amazing how time travels.
Yes. Well, the one I don't remember, of course, because it was so long ago. But the one that keeps coming into my mind, not that I'm exactly comparing the figures involved, but in terms of think the biggest trend, I mean, every inauguration is or every inauguration when you go from one president to another, be it from the same party or a different party, is of course a moment of transition, but very few are of enormous consequence.
Right.
The one I think that was of the greatest consequence was in 1861 on March the 4th, when we went from arguably the worst presidency in American history, even worse than Harding, that is to say, of James Buchanan, who at that point was the only Pennsylvanian elected to the presidency, to, of course, if not the greatest, the most consequential presidency of American history.
Right.
I think we're going this time from the worst administration in memory, of Joe Biden, who of course became the second president in my home state of Pennsylvania. We don't seem to produce great presidents so far, but to, of course, the potentially incredibly important second administration of Donald Trump.
Right. I think
I'm not going to second guess what's going to happen.
No.
Because we don't know.
We don't know.
But we already do know that this man who's going to be sworn in for the second time has made the most incredible political comeback in American history.
Right.
Against incredible odds. And it's an incredibly pregnant moment in our history because we're going to go from a period of self-destruction and neglect and wrong-headedness. If you don't mind my saying so.
No.
To the potential for a real American restoration,
right,
or renaissance.
No, I agree with you. I think that even somebody like me who didn't vote for Joe Biden, I expected a lot better from Joe Biden. I thought he would be a totally different president. I thought he would be more of a centrist. I thought he would be someone who would try to govern, take into account both sides of issues. But, he made a lot of bad mistakes. And that is why he leaves office with the ratings that he has. I mean, it's really sad in a way to see. You knew Joe Biden, or you wrote about Joe Biden many years ago. I remember from a prior interview that we did. And, to think of what could have been compared to what is or was, I am so disenchanted with the Biden presidency. The things that he's done that just absolutely made no sense, that did not help the country one bit. So I'm glad it's over, Barry. I really am. I'm glad it'll be over in a few days, and we can at least, as you say, look forward to a better presidency. By the way, we're chatting with our good friend Barry Casselman. We're chatting by phone with Barry Casselman, the Prairie Editor, as everybody knows him. Well, let's take a look at this transition, Barry. The last time we spoke was right after the election. And here we are right before the inauguration. As you see it, what are some of the highlights of this transition? And I know you wrote something about an international impact as well. So just give me your sense of what happened during this transition.
Well, what I've been writing has been about, to put it in a couple of words, to restore and grow the American political republic spirit. Not Republican, but just Republic, because it includes everybody. I think we went backwards in terms of the last 4 years. I will add, of course, as you know, I did write about Joe Biden in the 1980s. And I predicted, I was among the first to ever predict VP president, and it was a different Joe Biden. I was not terribly surprised because I had saw a clearly somewhat frail, if not disabled, president, even at the beginning. And I said so, wrote so, time and again, including my article I wrote 6 months before it happened, saying that, in fact, Joe Biden would never be the nominee, in spite of everything. So it isn't always all his fault, but it came under his watch, and he allowed some of the people around him who were more radical to prevail on ideas of policy and ideology, and move the country away from its political center, which you talked about from your point of view. And I think what we're seeing here is the country I think the country is more than ready, if not a little bit skeptical, or certainly wondering what's going to happen, when things are changed, but they're ready for a changed direction, and they're ready for a fresh start. And the question is, how will the new president-elect in his second term, after missing a term, Grover Cleveland, how will he govern, and what will he do? What will he accomplish?
Right.
One of the things I think everybody should look for is one of the things that's not expected, has high expectations, is in addition to the swearing in on Monday, there is a tradition for each new president or new term of a president for an inaugural address. And some of the addresses have been very incredible, important. Some have been very ordinary. Some have been very less than ordinary. There is not a big expectation because it's Donald Trump, and he's not famous for his formal speeches, although he's a very remarkable speech maker in his own way. But he's going to have an opportunity to say in a few words, to capture what he's about. As you know, there have been some very remarkable ones. Lincoln had two interesting inaugural addresses. His first, of course, was at the moment of transition from Buchanan to a period which led to the Civil War. And so it was even though all of Lincoln's speeches are quite beautifully written and spoken, it was a very pragmatic. He pleaded for peace to avoid a civil war, which nevertheless came. On the other hand, the second inaugural, which I think is without question the greatest, not only greatest inaugural speech ever given, but maybe one of the greatest speeches in the English language ever, which is I hope everyone who's listening to me goes on the search engine and looks it up, because you can see it's not very long. It's a wonderful, extraordinary, elegiac poem, if you will, a great moment of where language captures something beyond mere facts and goes into something very deeper. And he used that opportunity. We also know that in his first inaugural, Franklin Roosevelt said there's nothing to fear but fear itself. He, by the way, was the first president to have, as Bush, by the way, who's been very underestimated and now being reevaluated, was actually a very good writer and a very thoughtful president. He's not given a lot of credit because of the period when he was president. And his inaugural speeches are very interesting. So this is the opportunity that Mr. Trump has. I'm going to be very interested to watch and see what if he takes that opportunity. But regardless, he will then, no matter whatever he says, he will then immediately, I think, take a lot of actions, and we will see a dramatic shift in the direction of the country, of policy, and then we will see what happens.
Right.
We're really at a moment. When people who ever listen to this program years later, they'll know that we don't really know what's going to happen, but we know that something big is going to happen, and potentially very positive. But history has a wonderful way of working its way out. It's going to be a little bumpy and rowdy, maybe, over the next 4 years. But we will see what happens.
Right. No, I think you're right. I think it's going to be, there's a lot of expectations. I've been asked a couple of times about this. I did some Spanish interviews, and they asked me about it. And I very quickly told them, look, I don't expect any miracles, but I do expect some changes in direction, and the changes have to come. I mean, there are some really serious mistakes that were made under President Biden. By the way, before we leave the topic of presidential speeches, I wanted to get your reaction. One of my favorite moments in a presidential inauguration speech, it was not a big moment, but I remember it because I was listening to it on the radio. When President Carter started his speech and spoke about President Ford and congratulated him for everything he had done to heal the country, I thought that was such a classy move on the part of President Carter. It really hit me because I was listening to it on the radio, and I wasn't expecting that. But Carter, I thought, did a great job in saying what he said at that moment. I thought it was true, but it was, the fact that he said it, I thought it was a good situation for the country, Barry.
Well, I don't remember it, but I'm sure it's what happened. And yes, I agree. Of course, President Ford had pardoned former President Nixon and paid a price for that politically. But of course, it was probably the right thing at the time. And I think Ford was never elected. We forget he's the only man. Even when vice presidents take over from presidents in our history, they were elected as vice president.
Right.
Ford wasn't elected either as vice president or president, so he's a unique figure in American history.
He was, and
I think I don't know what can be said in terms of what's going to happen. I think President Biden has taken the last 30 days to try and sabotage the coming presidency. So I don't think it's necessary. I don't think he served the same function, and I don't suspect that the incoming president will pay any tribute to him.
No, I don't think so.
They met for the first time just after the election. It seems that Biden was going to be very cooperative and have a good transition, but that's not what actually happened. I think that President Trump will need to make a lot of executive orders to reverse number of things.
Right. No.
President Biden
Yes.
did a lot of things which were ultimately illegal,
Right.
such as trying to forgive student loans and other things
Yes.
like that, which were just, blatant political acts.
Right.
Of course, even the Supreme Court had to basically shut him down.
Well, and I would argue. I understand the president has the power to pardon and make commutations, but I think he's gone too far with it, and I just think it was a bad idea to to do 2,500 commutations or whatever here at the end of his presidency. I just thought it was a very bad idea to do that. And there may be more surprises from President Biden, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. But literally, I'm so disappointed with President Biden. I just think he's been really bad for the country. Give me your thoughts, Barry, on the nominations to the cabinet. They've been in the news quite a bit. And if I may just say this before you answer the question, I think President Trump did something smart in getting the names out there so early so that everybody would have a chance to get to know these guys. So give me your thoughts on the cabinet nominations and how it's going so far.
Well, I will. But just before that, I want to make a comment about what's happened in the last 48 hours, which is that two of the cabinet nominations were U.S. senators, and they had to be replaced.
Right.
And they have been replaced. In Florida, Governor DeSantis appointed the Attorney General, Ashley Moody, to be the new senator. I think it's a very good choice. In Ohio, Governor DeWine appointed John Husted, the lieutenant governor and former Secretary of State and former legislator, to be the senator. And I think he looks to be a good choice, although he's a little more controversial. But I think the two new senators are quite conservative, and I think will bolster, and both of them are, I think, going to be strong supporters of the president, especially Senator Designate Moody. And I think that looks like two good choices were made. And you never know about these things. They could have been other kinds of choices. But in both cases, the governors, I think, did the right thing.
Right.
As far as the cabinet choices, I think they're overall pretty good. I was not in favor of Mr. Getz for Attorney General, and I was glad that he withdrew. But for the most part, even though many of the choices are unorthodox, I think they're showing that they're going to be people who, number one, do what the president wants them to do, and number two, are competent to do it.
Right.
I think there's been opposition, understandable, especially since they were, Senator Rubio's choice for Secretary of State was not unorthodox, and I think that will sail through it. It should. He's an excellent choice.
Right.
And a number of the others are very good and very they don't rock the boat, at least in terms of who they are. But others do, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mr. Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and a few others. But they will be people who will shake up the deep state and bring, I think, a new austerity to government in D.C. the number of bureaucratic jobs in all areas. At the same time, I think we're going to beef up our military as a peace boost strength strategy. I think one of the bad things the Biden administration did was allow the military, all three branches of the military and its other components, to decline severely and make us much more vulnerable than we should be. I think that's going to be end to end. So I think that I would not be surprised if almost every single nominee now in place is passed. I think the Republican Senate, for the most part, is there, and I think thanks to Pennsylvania Senator Fetterman, a Democrat, who's of course taking the place of Joe Manchin as a person who crosses partisan lines and is more than willing to be bipartisan. He's already pledged to support several of the nominees, as have two others. So I think the votes are there. I think any attempt to stall will fail.
Right.
I think Senator Thune, there's a new article in the Washington Examiner magazine, which I got today, which goes in depth into into Senator Thune and what he will do as the new majority leader. And he will be a new face. He hopefully will be as successful or even more successful than Senator McConnell. And I think there will be, I think we have potential problems ahead in the House, where the majority is very small and has actually been made smaller by the resignation of several members of Congress who became cabinet officers. And there will be special elections in the next month, for about 30 days. The Republican majority will be very thin, and it will take everything Speaker Johnson can do to keep his delegation together. Nancy Pelosi was able to do that when she was Speaker of the Democrats, but the Republicans are a little more independent.
Mm-hmm.
Although we saw an attempt to sabotage Speaker Johnson failed.
Right.
Because, in fact, the president intervened and said, I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no question the main player today, or starting on Monday, will be Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
President, and he's a very powerful figure beyond the normal president-elect or new president.
Mm-hmm.
He's already been president. He knows what to do. He's gathered around him people who are loyal, which is very important. And I think that he's already, even before he became president, you and I discussed this privately before the program, even before he has become president, even now, he's basically in charge.
Right.
In terms of foreign policy. The world is not paying any attention to Joe Biden.
Right. No, I think that's a very good point, extremely good point. And you wrote about this yourself over the last few weeks. Let me ask you one last question. To me, one of the most interesting people, personalities, is Vice President Vance. I knew very little about him when he was nominated. As you may recall, I was hoping that he would pick Senator Rubio. he picked Senator Vance. I've been very impressed with Senator Vance as a campaigner, the way he handles questions. I think he's been excellent in that role. What type of role do you think he will play in this part two of the Trump administration, Barry?
Well, I'm like you. I was for Senator Rubio to be the vice president. Now he's got the number 3 position, but and he will be, along with Mr. Vance, will be one of the primary contenders in 2028 to succeed President Trump. But Vance, unquestionably, was an outstanding campaigner. In contrast to my governor, who I already knew was a weak figure, although I didn't know how weak he was and how duplicitous was his statements about his background, which all came up because the media here never did their job, never checked him out, and let him coast along with all the presumptions he made about his background and what he did as governor during the pandemic. But I knew, especially from the work he did as a pandemic, what a weak figure he was, and was shocked actually that Vice President Harris chose him for a running mate when she could have had someone like Josh Shapiro or even a number of others, Democratic figures for vice presidency. And when Mr. Vance and Mr. Waltz debated, and of course it was a rout, a disaster for Governor Waltz, who's now back here, still doing silly thing. I don't know whether you know. I believe it was, who was it in Texas? Which party?
Well, the Republicans have a very big majority, but they didn't get the speaker. I think you're talking about the speaker, right? The House Speaker down here.
I'm talking about before that. One of the parties didn't show up. They boycotted.
Oh, okay. That was the Democrats back in 20. I think it was 2011 when they boycotted. I know exactly what you're talking about. They went to Washington, D.C., and they boycotted, and eventually public opinion brought them back because the public didn't want that at all. The public thought that was really bad. And they basically, they get
in Minnesota because there was a tie in the House of Representatives, and one of the members his election was thrown out by the court because he didn't have the proper residency, which gave the Republicans a 1-vote majority. But the Democrats, in order to prevent a legal quorum, didn't show up to the session, the opening session. And the Republicans held it anyway and elected a speaker.
Right.
And that's all in the courts now. But Governor Waltz has participated in that by declaring special elections much too early, contrary to the law. That's now in I believe, contrary to the law, and that's now in the state Supreme Court. So so Governor Waltz, even when he came back, is still doing all these silly things. And anyway, but I strayed from the point that Mr. Vance, Senator Vance, now Vice President designate elect, was such a good choice, not only for the campaign, but his coolness, and his intelligence, his ability overall.
No, he's brilliant.
He's quite young.
Right.
And I think the country can feel at ease
Right.
And Mr. Vance will then compete probably with Senator Rubio, Vice President, Speaker, Secretary.
Right. Secretary of State. Yeah.
You know,
No, that's right.
A couple others for the new nomination.
Of course, the interesting thing about Secretary-elect Rubio, or designated Rubio, is that he's in his early 50s. So I mean, he's like 52. So I mean, he's got so much time ahead of him to someday run for president. But I really feel, after watching him in that Senate hearing, he is as sharp as anybody in Washington. But well, we're going to have to wrap it up, Barry. But I want to thank you so much as always. The only thing I would say is that we have a pending show sometime, maybe 30 or 45 days from now. Take a look at the first 100 days, as they like to say. And I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of activity. There's going to be a lot of action. Donald Trump is going to come out swinging. And I believe, at least in the beginning, that the public is going to support it. Now, again, that could change by summer. But I think in the beginning, he will have public support. That's my sense, Barry.
Well, he already does, as you know.
Yes.
Some poll shows actually a surprisingly strong amount of support for President-elect Trump, even before he takes office.
Right.
Definitely in a positive. He's out of the negatives that he was in, whereas Mr. Biden is actually at his low point. Right.
No, you're exactly right, and it's I think at least for the next 90 days or so, let's say up to Memorial Day, I think he will enjoy a lot of public support. Obviously, they have to deliver. But I want to thank you again so much for giving us your input, Barry. The Prairie Editor is a great source. I always recommend people to go to it. And you've been writing in other places as well. And I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, and stay out of that cold weather.
Well, I'll do my best. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Our good friend, Barry Casselman, the Prairie Editor, joining us by phone tonight. He joined us by phone tonight. So, and he reported on his thoughts on the election. I thought his comments about the cabinet were absolutely great. Yes, I think that the nominations for the cabinet have turned out to be very good. And their presentations before the Senate, we still have to see Robert Kennedy and others. But the ones so far, I think, have been really, really good. And one more thing I wanted to say, and I said it during the introduction, I am really disappointed with the Biden presidency. I know I didn't vote for him. I agree with that. I understand that. But you expect your president to be better. And he just, in my opinion, was not good at all. And I think he actually did hurt the country. And he did it by simply, let's say, going the other way. He should have stayed more in the center, should have listened more to the senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin. That's who he should have listened to. And I think he would have been at least a more successful, a better presidency for the nation. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later.